Blake stifled a yawn as she sat at the library terminal and flicked through another outdated news report. A cup of coffee sat on the desk beside her, as cold as her enthusiasm for the content before her. Her eyes hovered over a news report, only to clench shut as she heard a telling sigh behind her. "I thought you were over this. Son, her," she wasn't sure, friend, stalker, potential boyfriend, and occasional appreciated companion? Whatever he was, she could feel his disapproval. "Blake, you and your team stopped the White Fang. They're going to be reeling after that. What would Yang say if she saw you doing this?" "Good work, I'd imagine." Blake sighed and looked at him with shadowed eyes. After all, she's the one who put me up to it. She stifled a smirk when Sun blinked and leaned back. "Eh? I'm not researching for myself." Blake pushed off the computer, happy for the distraction. Her nose twitched and she picked up a scent she needed. Amber eyes zeroed in on the mug in Sun's hand, which had delicious steam whiffing from it. "Were you going to drink that?" "The coffee?" "Yes, the coffee that is in my hand. That's the one." "Blake, why would I carry around a coffee I didn't intend to drink?" He looked at her, but her eyes were fixed a little lower. He sighed. "Here, take it." It was soft and rich on her tongue, but more importantly, the caffeine caused her mind to stir. She let out a long, contented sigh that definitely did not sound like a purr. "Thank you, son. I needed that." She heard him laugh as he settled down next to her. "Yeah, I can tell. So you're not doing this for yourself, and Yang asked you to? You care to explain?" She supposed she could, since he'd brought her the caffeine required to keep working. She cradled the mug before her, half to savor its warmth, but mostly to prevent him from stealing any. Well, stealing it back. Okay, now she knew she was tired. She shifted to the left and gestured for him to take a look at the screen, which he did. "White Fang news reports?" he said. "Not in the city though." "Huh. Some of these are 5 years old. I'm looking for things they did in the past, specifically. I'm looking for any activities that might have been reported outside the city, and some in the outlying frontier settlements." "I can see that, but why?" Blake stared at Sun with a weary expression. Did she tell him the truth? He was a trustworthy person, and even if he could be a little embarrassing when it came to his attempts to impress her, she knew from the docs that he knew when it was time to be serious though. He didn't play around when it came to tough situations. He met her eyes, unafraid and calm. Blake made her decision. "Yang and I are worried about Jean. Is he okay? He looked fine when I saw him yesterday." Sun's eyes were wide, his concern genuine, and for that she gave him a warm smile. "He's fine right now. He went for a counseling session with Miss Goodwitch. Weiss went with him." Blake sighed and pointed back to the screen, where she brought up a recent story about the breach. "We were worried there might be some underlying problem though. Something that made him risk his life so carelessly against the White Fang. You remember the docs, I take it?" "I was out for the yen, but I caught the story," Sun said. "I know he saved our bacon." Blake nodded. "He did. And that's not the problem, or at least not entirely." She sighed and rubbed her forehead. It was hard to explain, especially since Yang and she had more understanding on the matter. "The problem is that he keeps doing this," she explained. "There's something behind Jean's willingness to step at the docks and kill the White Fang, behind how quickly he accepted and helped me raid their warehouses. It's behind his actions in Mountain Glen as well." "You think he's run into them before?" Sun filled in. "That's why you're looking for attacks outside of Vale. Yang is going to contact his family, but I thought it might help to see if there were any reports from the place he lived. There has to be something. Couldn't you just ask him?" He wouldn't give an answer. Blake said distractedly. She already brought up a new report and began to skim through it. "Whatever this is, it's dangerous enough to make him risk his life against them. You know as well as I do, he wouldn't share something like that with us." "Yeah, I guess so." Sun blew out a long breath. "He dotes on you guys." "Not like he'd put you in danger if he could help it." Blake hummed in agreement. It was both annoying and endearing in equal measure. It was also hypocritical, since they cared for him too, and it hurt to see him try to take everything onto his shoulders. They were a team for a reason. Why couldn't he understand that? If something is happening, Blake paused to sigh. If there is someone or something he feels the needs to fight against, then we want to know what it is. So you can help him? Yeah. She took a deep breath. We're not going to sit back and watch him destroy himself, even if it is in our best interests. Sounds like a good cause, Sun said. How can I help? Blake stopped working to stare at him. He wanted to help, genuinely. She traced his face for any sign of deceit, or that he just wanted to impress her. But Sun's eyes were deadly serious. You'd help? She asked. He saved my life, Blake. He saved me and you, and he's been a total bro ever since. He helped me do my best at the dance. He tried to help Neptune, and he's an all-round cool guy. I'm not going to sit back and do nothing if he's self-destructing. Sun leaned on the table and stared into her eyes. I may not be the best of guys, but I'll do my best. Just tell me what to look for. Sun. She was touched. She could admit that. It was strange in a way, that this was the most he'd ever impressed her, and that it wasn't because of his attempts to be romantic or the effort he put in for her, but rather his concern for her team leader. She smiled nonetheless, an honest one that reached her eyes. It fell a moment later, replaced with a determined grimace. She nodded at him. I'm looking for White Fang incidents where he lived. A frontier village called Ansel. Yang is contacting his family, but there might be one thing we need to research. Blake gave him a watered-down version of Yang's story on how Jean was recruited. She didn't mention Yang's role in it, nor how she nearly suffered but for Jean. Instead, she focused on how strange it was for the headmaster to enforce the recruitment of a student. By the end of it, Sun looked equal parts shocked and impressed. If you can, I need you to see if there have been any post-cases of Beacon doing that. There has to be a reason why Osman would feel he needed Jean enough to go that far, and talent doesn't really cut it. Yeah, that's not when there's a waiting list for this place. Sun rubbed his chin in thought. You're right. It's fishy as hell. There's gotta be more going on. Can I leave that to you? I'll do my best. Sun nodded and dragged a seat around to the other side of the desk. A holographic terminal flickered up before him. He was lost to it a moment later. Blake smiled, impressed more than she cared to admit. Maybe Jean was right about Sun. Maybe he was worth paying a little more attention to. For now, though, she had her own job. Her eyes fell once more to the screen, as yet another story opened. There had to be something. They just needed to find it. I won't let you do everything on your own, Jean. Yang pulled her best smile when the call connected through and revealed a woman with blonde hair, a shade darker than her own. It hung to her shoulders, and she was a little older than herself but no less beautiful. Hey, it's Sapphire. Hello? The woman paused for a few seconds, likely to think who it was. Ah, you're one of Jean's teammates, aren't you? It's Yang, and yeah, I'm his friend. Is something wrong? Has something happened to him? The woman's face moved closer to the screen without warning, and Yang winced at the sudden switch. She waved one hand in front of the screen. No, he's fine. I didn't call to tell you anything bad. Oh, that's a relief. Sapphire Arc sighed. I'm sorry for that. It's just that every time he calls, it sounds like he's gotten in some fresh trouble. For a moment, I feared the worst. Yang groaned and sat down on her bed. She knew exactly what Sapphire meant. Tell me about it. I mean, sometimes I wonder if we can even leave him to go to the bathroom without something happening. Whatever happened to the lazy guy who just slept all the time? Yang palmed her face. She peeked through her fingers when she heard the woman on the other end of the call start to laugh. It sounds like you're learning. Jean is, let's just say, I'm pleased he had 7 sisters to look out for him. I'm not sure I could have done it on my own. The woman smiled and tossed her hair back. How is he? Honestly. He's fine. I said honestly, Yang. I get enough fine from him. He won't so much as tell us what happened, or why he suddenly refuses to do a video call. The woman's green eyes narrowed, and now I'm assuming he lied about not being able due to a mission, since you seem to have no problem making one. Yang winced at being called out, and for accidentally throwing Jean under the bullhead. She didn't even realize he'd been lying to them. Yang, please. I'm his sister. I seem to recall you have a younger sibling as well. Imagine what it would feel like to not know whether she was okay. The words were enough to spark the image, even before she had a chance to reply. Yang felt a knot in her stomach. She sighed. He was injured on a recent mission. It was bad, I'd admit. But he's in the middle of making a full recovery. The latter was quickly added when Sapphire gasped. He's going to be fine and the doctor is happy with his progress. But I think he didn't want to worry you all until he was better. Well, he didn't want to worry one of you. What do you mean? Do you mean our mother? The pregnancy? Sapphire sighed and looked away. Through the screen, the background behind the woman changed, suggesting movement. She must have stepped outside as well, for the lighting became a little brighter. I suppose I can't even get angry at him for that. Mum would panic, and no matter how much experience she has, having 8 children hasn't left her body in the best of health. Is she okay? She's fine, it's just... I suppose you could say it's just a little harder for her. There shouldn't be any problems, so long as nothing strenuous happens. How bad were his injuries? Bad. Yang said. Bad enough to strain Juniper? How does torture, beating and drugging sound? For fuck's sake. Sapphire glared away from the camera. How does he even find these situations? Who did this? Who the hell would do that to him? What? Sapphire took a deep breath and let it go. And then took 2 more in quick succession. Okay, she whispered. I'm beginning to understand why he didn't want Mum to know about this. Yeah... Yang winced. It was bad, honestly. We managed to get him back. But he doesn't look fantastic at the moment. I guess he figured you'd all notice if you saw him. Thank you. Really, Yang. Thank you for letting me know. I realize you're his teammate and I'm just his sister, but I appreciate being kept in the loop. Yang nodded, while a part of her felt like she was betraying him. But a larger part of her knew what it was like to be in Sapphire's situation. Ruby hid so many things that were wrong at Signal, and it hurt not to find out about it until it was too late. I'm sure he'll fill you and your family in on the rest once he's better, she said. I think he just wants to do it in a way that won't panic everyone. I understand. I just... Dad told us what Beacon could be like, but he never mentioned anything like this. Is all of this normal? How can my brother end up in all these situations? It's not normal. Yang recognized her cue easily enough. A perfect chance to slip into the reason she called in the first place. That's why I wanted to get in touch with you, actually. The things he does here, and some of the stuff we've found out, they just don't mesh with the genre we know. If we're going to look out for him, I figured we could ask you to fill in some of the blanks. Sapphire's eyes narrowed. The woman didn't speak for a moment, and Yang worried the request would be dismissed entirely. After a few seconds, she spoke. I'm not sure what you mean. What kind of blanks are you talking about? She's suspicious. Yang thought with a wince. I'd best start slow. Well, for one thing, the doctor here said he suffered from malnutrition. We noticed he didn't ever eat much here. But was he the same when he lived with you? Malnutrition? Sapphire whispered. No. We never noticed. But now that I think about it, he always left some food behind on his plate. It wasn't enough to be obvious, she added. Mum would have freaked out otherwise. How bad is it? Worse because of what happened. Apparently, it made it so his body couldn't fight off the drugs as easily. You might not have noticed, to be honest. I think it only got bad because of the extra exercise he got here, not to mention the missions. I'm going to go all out on a wild guess and say he wasn't exactly active in Ansel. Not unless you mean in the bedroom. Sapphire snorted. He would jog in the mornings, but only to keep in shape. He'd fall asleep through most things. The same way he had when he first started Beacon. Yang's eyes narrowed as she hummed and tried to place the image of the person he was now. He really had changed around the time of the docks. The moment when the White Fang first encountered their team. It all came back to them. No matter how much she tried to think of a different idea. He either hated the White Fang, or he hated Torchwick. But it was definitely one of them. Is he eating better now? Sapphire asked. Now that you're aware of it, I mean. He's getting full meals and snacks. Yang answered. Sapphire laughed. I bet he isn't thrilled with that. Whines like a baby. She agreed. Honestly, you'd think we're killing him. He's always been dramatic, even when he was a little child. It changed as he grew up, rather swiftly in fact. Sapphire paused. She looked troubled for a moment, but the expression was quickly washed away. Thank you for looking after him then. I owe you. It's mostly wise, to be honest. Blake and I chip in, but she's the only one of the patience to sit through all his excuses and force it down his throat at the end. She's the one who has feelings for him, isn't she? Sapphire saw the shocked look on Yang's face and smiled. Mum told me she'd asked him out. Apparently he told her. I think it was obvious when we first met her, however, even if she didn't realize it herself. The two were almost inseparable. Sapphire laughed. I certainly know Amber noticed. Coral did too, no doubt. Ugh. There was that name Yang hadn't been prepared for. Crap. Forgot all about that. She had the feeling Weiss had too. Or maybe she hadn't and simply thought the risk worth it. Are you all coming for the festival? Yang asked. I think so. Even if Mum and Dad don't really agree with Jean being a huntsman, we'd still come to cheer him on. Well, double crap. That might be a problem. But it was one for later. Right now, she needed to focus on what was important. Yang faked a quick smile. There was something else we wanted to ask, she said. Weiss told us before your mother said Jean had a bad encounter with a Beowulf when he was younger. The one that scarred his stomach? Yeah? She said that he seemed to change a little after that. I was just wondering if he had any other encounters like that. Or maybe with anything else that was dangerous. As dangerous as a Beowulf? No. I can't think of anything like that. Yang cursed and looked around the room for inspiration. Her eyes fell on one of Blake's bows. It might have been something he didn't tell you, she said. Your mother said Jean acted differently from how he used to? Do you know if anything happened to him or around that time? Something that might have made him act differently? I don't. Why are you asking? Sapphire's face drew into a harsh frown. If you wanted to know, why not ask him? Yang winced. Because he wouldn't tell us. And you think I will? I'm not going to go around behind my brother's back like that. I think this discussion is over. Thank you for the call. No, please wait! Yang paused to take a deep breath, but rushed on it when it was clear she didn't have much time. I'm not asking because I'm nosy. I'm not asking because I want to use this information in some way. We're genuinely worried about him. This is to help him. So you want me to dig around and tell you all his little secrets? No! I think we're done here. Goodbye. It's going to happen again. Silence reigned in the dorm. Not a single sound. Not even of the call ending. Yang's chest rose and fell. But it was the still face of the woman on the scroll which occupied her vision. She didn't wait for a response. She didn't have the time for it. Whatever happened in the past to make Jean into the person who would throw his life away against the Beowulf is happening again here, Yang said. He's done it multiple times now. For me, for Blake, for Weiss, and it shows no sign of stopping. She clenched her teeth together and growled angrily. All of her fear for him, her worry, and the frustration it caused rose to the surface. You don't understand, Sapphire. Each time he does it, whether it's stepping in front of a fireball or being tortured, he just writes our concern off like it doesn't matter, like it's unimportant, like he thought they had better things to do. like he didn't expect their concern. Every time, we ask him not to do it again, to come to us first or not to risk his life for us, and every time he says he won't. But we can see that he's lying. We're not stupid, and we can see that little flash of amusement on his face, like he knows something will happen and he knows he'll throw himself in front of us again. Her fingers gripped the device so tight, it started to crack. Her eyes were scrunched shut, and she didn't even care if the old woman saw her in such a state. When she looked back into the scroll, Yang knew her irises were bright red. "He's going to risk his life again," she snarled, "and he damn well knows it. Well, I refuse to sit back and let that happen one more time. I damn well refuse to sit here, knowing something is wrong, and not to do a damn thing about it. He might not be so lucky next time and I'm not losing him, Sapphire." Yang glared at the woman several years older than her. "So you can either tell me what I need to know to look after him, or I'll come down there myself and force it out of you." Yang heard nothing but her breathing and the sound of her heartbeat. It echoed in her head, and with no words passing through her scroll, her hand shook. "Say something," she begged within her mind. "Help me." Sapphire said nothing, and Yang sighed. "Fine. That's fine. If you won't help me, I'll do this myself." "You really do care about him, don't you?" The question caught her off guard, cutting into her fury. Yang's eyes flickered back to her color for a moment. "He's my teammate," she said. "He's my friend. He's family." "I will." Sapphire cut off and frowned. "I will make inquiries." You will? Not for you. I'm doing this for him." The older woman scowled. "I'm doing this because I'm not blind either. I was there. I was supposed to look after him when we fled the Beowulf. I was the one he tricked, who he fooled into leaving him behind while he stayed to risk his life." Sapphire's eyes closed. "I'm doing this because I promised to not let something like this happen again. It's why I started to train. Why I asked my father to teach me how to fight." Yang's relief was palpable. She wasn't sure she dared hope, but she leaned forward regardless. "Anything you had would be great. I'm not trying to hurt him, Sapphire. We, Blake and I, we're trying to prevent what has happened multiple times before from happening again. We just want him to be safe, to be happy." And he was happy now. She could tell. It was impossible not to notice the way he looked at them, when he mistakenly thought they weren't paying attention. He could be such an idiot sometimes. Hadn't he heard them say they would keep an eye on him while he recovered? There wasn't a single moment at least one of them wasn't watching. Jean did change. Sapphire said, "I don't know what caused it. I don't think anyone does. But something must have happened because he went from an excitable, bumbling and awkward little boy into what he is now. We love him, make no mistake. And growing up is normal. People change. But it was a lot. It was. It felt like his very being changed, like he grew up suddenly in a short amount of time." Sapphire sighed. "Before, there was always the sense I was in charge, that I was looking after him and he looked up to me. In some ways that didn't change. But he stopped feeling like a little brother and more like someone my own age." "Did you notice any events?" Yang asked, almost desperately. "Were there any violent encounters? Maybe something happened in Ansel?" "What? No. Not that I know of." The older woman's face said she knew full well that didn't mean they hadn't happened. "I'll ask around, Yang, but I think you need to speak with someone in particular. When Jean changed, most of us weren't sure what to do, but she bonded with him almost immediately. Some of the things he says and does as well. She seems to understand them, even when we don't." "Who?" Yang asked. "I'll take anything I can get at this point." "Good. We'll be in Vale in a little over a week. I'll talk to Coral and see if she's willing to meet with you. I'll be in touch." Alright." Yang agreed, putting the scroll down as the screen flashed black. More questions had been raised, but unlike every other time, There had been an answer given. She was right. Something happened to Jean to make him change. It would have been impossible otherwise. The way he is, from his eating habits to his lack of respect for his own life. We all suspected he suffered from some kind of depression, but this is as good as confirms it was caused by something. Before, it could have been clinical, or formed from a number of things, maybe even a hormonal imbalance. But the way he acted with the White Fang, the way he was almost desperate to protect them from harm. She knew that feeling. It was what she felt after Summer died. This desperate determination to protect Ruby, to not lose anyone like she'd lost Summer. Jean felt the same. She was sure of it. Ugh. He's not going to appreciate me going behind his back like this. Yang fell back onto her mattress and sighed. She'd be lucky if he gave her a repeat performance of his humiliating spanking, but his actual response would likely be far colder. Still, she'd rather he hate her and be alive than love her and be dead.